Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, episode 5. Today on the podcast, we have the first book review, and I will be reviewing Fitness Confidential by Vinnie Tortorich. So Vinnie Tortorich is a trainer. I first heard of him through the Adam Carolla show. And I still remember when he first came on, my dad sent a text to me. He's like, "Oh, you guys gotta hear this guy on Adam and Drew." And so Adam Carolla is a comedian. If you guys don't know him, he started out being on the radio, and then went on to do with Loveline. Loveline was the show that him and Dr. Drew Pinsky did together in the 90s. Eventually got picked up by MTV to be a video show as well. And then Adam went on to do The Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel and then radio. And now he's a big podcaster. He's actually, this is a tangent here. I actually was trying to go intern for Adam Carolla after the Navy. And I was in contact with one of the interns, and I came back from underway, and that guy wasn't working there anymore. And then that's where I lost my in. After that, it was, haven't really heard back from him, but still love him. And they're, I think, the best podcast. So anyway, Vinnie Tortorich was on that podcast and talking about something called no sugars, no grains. So NSNG. And I never heard of such a thing before. I always grew up with low fat everything, low fat yogurt, low fat milk. I remember laughing at my sister's old boyfriend and thinking he was crazy for drinking just normal vitamin D milk, thinking, oh, that's so unhealthy for you. And then Vinnie Tortorich is over here putting heavy cream in his coffee. So it just kind of blew my mind to think someone in such a great shape could eat that way and actually eat these foods that I always enjoyed, but I thought were really bad for you, like bacon and eggs. You know, we would get those cartons of egg whites back in the day, and they just never tasted good, but I thought I was being healthy because, it's just a bunch of protein, right? And no fat. And fat's bad because fat will make you fat. And it turns out Vinnie goes against that whole notion. So I'll start off with the book. And this is just one aspect of Vinnie's whole line of materials and content he's made. And even since I've started following him, he's just came out with a ton of great stuff. The guy just can't stop. He has a motor. It's awesome. So if you want to find any of this stuff, go to vinnietortorich.com. There, the most, I think, important document he has is this PDF he has. It's $10, and it just explains NSNG, like a big overview of what foods to avoid, why, all the resources, and to go look further into the problem if you're still not convinced. There's a bunch of doctors, low carb, high fat doctors that he references in that PDF. So there you can also download this podcast. He was doing phone consults. I'm pretty sure he still is. And that's a great way to talk to him directly, whether you're training for something or you want to lose weight, and he can hear your situation and really explain exactly what you need to do if you need that, person-to-person contact. All his social media links are there, and then he has links to his documentaries. So these he started doing just recently. In 2009, his first was Fat, a documentary, and he got all the thought leaders in like the low carb, high fat and kind of movement, got those together, explaining how we got the food pyramid that we did have, where this whole craze for grains came from, and why that's wrong, and why the thought of fat will make you fat is wrong, and fat should be rather thought of as the preferred energy source for the body. So that did well, and 2 years later he came out with Fat 2, another documentary, and just really going deeper into the subject. And then early this year, he came out with a documentary called Beyond Impossible, and that one's kind of exposing the corruption of the fake meat industry. Really, he doesn't have anything against vegans. Some vegans he does, but if you want to be vegan for like just animal rights issues or stuff like that, he's like, there's no problem at all with that. He has clients like that. There's ways to do it. He recommends taking some supplements, but really all this fake meat he's very much against, because a lot of it's just seed oil, and all that seed oil, there's a lot of studies showing it causes inflammation, and it's just not good for the heart. Just like margarine, like there was that push back in the day that margarine's better for you than butter, when really that's the exact opposite. Those seed oils are not good. And one of the things he mentions in his podcast, not in the book, but when McDonald's shifted from tallow and then they started going into some sort of vegetable oil, and how that kind of is correlated with the rise in people getting fat as well. And then he loves coffee, so he made his own coffee company, Pure Coffee Club. His vitamin company, Pure Vitamin Club. And then recently started this too, NSNG Foods, where this is interesting too, because it's not like your Nutrisystem or Jenny Craig. NSNG Foods, it's pretty much only sells ultra fats. So back when I first started following him, he would recommend this thing called F-bombs, fat bombs. And there's either like these nut butters, so like macadamia nut butter, just a ton of fat, or they would have just like MCT oil that you could just drink from a packet. And I think he realized that maybe he could do it a little better with some better ingredients and flavors. And so he started that company as well for NSNG Foods. So that's kind of the overview of all the stuff he has going on. And so this book was released in 2013, and really his co-author, Dean Laurie, was a big motivation of why he actually put this out there, because his goal is to make as many people, healthier, bring down obesity as best he can. And so kind of this book was the first time I heard of it, and he's just done a ton of stuff and continues to talk, and he's super active on Twitter. So all right, I'll stop fanboying about Vinnie Tortorich, but he's awesome. So in the book, he talks about his story, how he grew up in Louisiana. Parents were both school teachers, and they realized the public school system was so bad, they sent Vinnie to private school. So they sent him to Catholic school, since all pretty much, the private schools are associated with religion. And Vinnie did not have a good time in Catholic school. He got bullied by the kids and the nuns because he had a speech impediment, because he had an issue with his hearing, so he couldn't pronounce words, as a normal kid. So the nuns made fun of him, the kids made fun of him, and he was really in a dark place until he saw on TV, he was going to watch The Wide World of Sports, and right before that, this guy named Jack LaLanne was on TV and just jacked, looked like a superhero. And Vinnie realized if he lift weights, he could, maybe look like Jack LaLanne. And no one's gonna bully Jack LaLanne, because he'll beat the shit out of him. So Vinnie started lifting. He found a local gym. This gym owner, just awesome guy, really saw Vinnie, wanted to put in the hard work, and was training him. So Vinnie just got in great shape. He's a big time football player, ended up playing football at Tulane, and that's where he got his degree in fitness. So he goes to Tulane, gets a degree in fitness, and then he's there in New Orleans working. He's a PE teacher, and one of the stories he tells that kind of sparks his journey is he's hanging out with his girlfriend one night doing laundry, and he's saying, "Man, this dryer is really just shrinking these jeans. I can barely fit them on anymore." And she looked at him and she told him, "Yeah, it's not the dryer, Vinny. It's you're getting fat." And he's realized she was right and decided then that he wasn't gonna get fat. So this was before he knew the low carb, high fat stuff. So he's like, okay, I need to get in shape. I'm gonna start exercising a ton. I'm gonna ride my bike. Started riding his bike all over Louisiana. All that pizza money and restaurant money he had saved up, he used that to buy his bike. So he started eating healthy too. He's making his own food. And so he's doing great, losing a ton of weight. And he hears about this race across America. It's like some bike race where they cross America. And he's like, man, that sounds awesome. I want to do that. And he's training, and then he realizes, Louisiana is not the best place to train. It's really flat. And so he picks up and in one day drives all the way to Los Angeles. And so there he becomes a fitness trainer, starts meeting celebrities out there, would go to their homes, train all these celebrities, all these housewives. And then he even did some like modeling on the side. So he's doing well for himself, and he's riding his bike like crazy, training a ton of people, just grinding. And he ended up shifting from mountain bike racing to road racing because his shoulder, he actually would pass out while riding his bike because of the pain was so bad since his shoulder was messed up from football. And so he shifted to purely road race, still training, wants to do this thing called the Furnace Creek 508, which is a 500-mile bike ride. And it's over like 35,000 feet climbed in elevation. And you're doing it in Death Valley, like the hottest place in the country. So he has his mindset on that. And then one of his ideas was he wanted to do the altitude training because that was really popular back then, where you would sleep at high altitude and then you go to lower altitude to train, and something with like the oxygen in your blood. And there's a company that sold like those chambers that you could simulate that without actually going to the mountains. But he wanted to make sure it worked. So he goes and gets his blood tested before to see if it has any effect. And he's actually friends with the doctor there. And she calls him with his results and said, "Hey, this is really not good. You need to keep getting this checked out. Your numbers are off." And he kind of brushes it aside, thinking, well, most people don't train like a bad man how I do. My resting heart rate, I forgot what it is, some ridiculous number. It was like 40 when most, the average one is 60. So, he's in great shape. And so he brushes it off, but still goes and gets a bone marrow biopsy. And he goes in there with this doctor, Deborah, and they were going to do it another day, but because it was near closing time, they didn't have time to actually give him any anesthesia or painkillers or anything like that. And Vinny decides, "Oh, I'm fine. I don't need it. I don't need any of that. I can do it just all natural." So that just seemed crazy to me. They stick a needle through his body to the bone marrow without any pain relievers or anything like that. So he said that's like the worst pain he's ever felt in his life, but he does it. And so he continues just to train. And one day he gets a call in the middle of a bike ride, and Deborah tells him, Vinny, you need to get off your bike right now, call a cab, and come directly back home. And so Vinny he kind of scoffs it. It's like, he tells her okay, but he ends up finishing his, biking all the way back to his car, goes and gets some coffee, and then ends up going to the house to see Deborah. And when he gets there, his best friend Andy's car is in the driveway. So he thinks, okay, something's up. She breaks the news to him that he has leukemia and he's got to get chemo. And so Vinny just has, a great attitude about it. A lot of the stuff in the book, a lot of it's kind of just motivational and kind of inspiring of how he approaches that whole his cancer and how he gets through it. But he ends up doing chemo. There's a lot of good stories there too about him in his house while he's on chemo, and some of the visitors he has. Pretty entertaining. But once that time's done, he pretty much starts training before he even knows if he's cancer free or not. He has to get another bone marrow biopsy, and of course he does it without any drugs again, and still not good. Still has some cancer in there, but luckily that was not super concerning because there's still time. So he has to wait a few more weeks. Of course, he's still training during this time, and he finally finds out that he's cancer free. And so that's pretty much the book. So the book doesn't give a big overview of his diet other than cut out the sugars and grains, which is broad overview, all you need to do to, get a good weight. There's also extra chapters at the end there that talk about how he eventually does the Furnace Creek 508 and finishes that. So that was a big success. But even then, he hadn't really truly discovered the benefits of low carb, high fat. So that's why I really like the PDF, where he covers this in depth, and the podcasts are great too. But gosh, there's days, months of podcasts out there where the PDF, you can get it all in one place. Still recommend checking out both, but definitely start with the PDF. I'm going to give it a little preview. One section is debunking some food myths. So here are some of his takes that are some common myths. One is the calorie in, calorie out approach. The big thing there is, while yes, physically, if you consume less calories than you burn, you're losing weight. If you use that approach to lose weight, you're not considering how the types of food you eat affect your appetite or your hormones, your endocrine system. And it's not a sustainable way to lose weight. It's not something you can do you can't be on a deficit forever, right? So it's like a roller coaster where you realize you get a little too heavy, so you start going on a deficit, and then you go back to how you're eating, you start creeping up in weight again, and you go on a diet, like a little short-term diet, which you're just starving yourself again, and you go back down. So he argues NSNG, you'll reach a healthy weight, and your appetite will go to where it really should be, and you won't be hungry throughout the day or wanting to snack throughout the day because you'll be using fats instead of the sugars to burn. So you won't have all those large insulin spikes. And I found this to be the biggest benefit of going NSNG, because as a kid, I was a pretty chubby kid, but I started doing sports and always stayed in decent shape. But I tried NSNG in college when I've heard it, and I've never felt better in my life. Like, so much energy, could go the whole day, pretty much without eating and be fine. Whereas when I was dependent on carbs, I was the guy that ate 6 meals a day, snacked all the time. But once you're fat adapted, it's a beautiful thing. You almost eat because you want to stay on a schedule, but you're not super hungry, and it's crazy. It's a weird feeling. Other myth is, he says, veganism, vegetarianism is the best way to lose weight and be healthy. So he debunks this. He's like, if you want to do it for ethical reasons, like, it's fine. But if you're doing it to be healthy, you're missing out on a lot of the benefits of meat. There's some like vitamins he goes into that, like, if he was training someone that was a vegetarian or vegan, he would definitely have them supplement a lot. And it's hard to get all your fats, right? So it's possible, but it's a lot more difficult. Myth: we all need to eat 5 servings of fruit per day. Fruit is probably, like, if we actually did have the food pyramid, it would be up near the top. It's definitely not essential at all. He calls it nature's candy. So it's better than candy in that if you eat it in its raw form, you are getting that fiber. So the effects of the fiber help us process that sugar. It doesn't cancel it out. It's still sugar. Your liver sees sugar, and you're going to have those insulin spikes. So it's not necessary, but definitely against the juices too, the fruit juices. That takes all the worst parts about fruit and packages it up in one little container to go directly to your liver without that fiber benefit, and it's terrible. Myth: whole grains are good for you. Your liver does not care if you're eating Wonder Bread or 100% whole wheat. You may have a little more of a complex carb response rather than like a spike, but they're both sugar and both bad. Myth: always choose the low fat option. So the fat actually helps you stay satiated. That's one example he uses is in Italy, they eat gelato, which is ice cream, but with like double the cream content, so a lot fattier. And if you ever look at a gelato, like, the portion size is so much smaller because it actually is satiating. So all that fat is good. He's like, call fat energy. You need fat. The more fat, the better for the most part. Trans fats are bad. There are bad fats. All the seed oil fats are bad, but these natural fats, the creams, the tallow, the lards, the olive oils, coconut oil, like, those are good. And have you guys, after eating all this low fat yogurt junk, if you try some full fat yogurt, some, like, I've seen 5-10% yogurt, it is delicious. It's so much better, like, taste wise. It's a life changing. Myth: honey, agave, maple syrup, and artificial sweeteners are okay. That's the thing. You're trying to trick yourself, but your hormones, your endocrine system isn't going to get tricked. You're going to have the same cravings that you get as if you had sugar, whether you have stevia or agave. If you're trying to lose weight, stay away from these. And if you want to put some life into living, if you want to have some gelato on the weekend, or you want to have that dessert, because it's not going to be a staple in your diet, like, this is one of my favorite quotes. He says, it doesn't matter what you eat between Christmas and New Year's. It matters what you eat between New Year's and Christmas. So when you want to put a little life into living, have the good stuff, have real sugar, have real food. Like, just don't make it a habit. And the thing is that once you're fat adapted and you have that, you'll recover so much faster. And it's kind of crazy how sweet it tastes too. You won't even need as much sugar. So if you're going to put some life into living, just eat the real stuff. Myth: drink X liters of water a day. I mean, he's gonna tell you, yeah, water's great if you're training, but it's not super important for weight loss. Myth: saturated fat is bad for you. There's studies and studies coming out that say it's almost the higher the saturated fat, the healthier the person is. And you can see this with all the carnivore diets too. You got Dr. Sean Baker. If you look him up, he just eats meat and like eggs, and I think he eats cheese too. But that dude's ripped and eats a ton of saturated fat. Very healthy, man. It's an N1, of course, like N1 example. But there's studies and studies are coming out. A lot of this anti-saturated fat bullshit is what it is. All comes from the grain industry, and really Owen Kellogg is an evil guy. If you do some research on Kellogg's and how they got in bed with the government and the McGovern committee, if you start looking down that rabbit hole, and you realize Kellogg also based a lot of his food products on being a Seventh-day Adventist and was like anti-meat, you can see how our diet recommendations got to where they are. Myth: only eat egg whites. There's no fat. The yolk is like the best thing. It's got the fat. It's got all the nutrients. Sure, egg whites have protein, but if you have too much protein, it's just going to get converted to sugar. Protein's not going to have the same effect that fat will have in making you satiated. Myth: diet sodas and foods are okay. Same thing with the artificial sweeteners. Diet soda's going to have the same effect on your body. Really bad for you. Stay away from them. One of the easiest things I think to cut out, just stop drinking soda. If you drink soda a lot and you just stop drinking soda, pounds are going to just fly off you. All right, so that's just a preview. I still recommend you guys go to Vinnie's website, check out this PDF, and hopefully you might think I'm crazy, but maybe this will get you the incentive to kind of go down the keto rabbit hole. No sugar, no grains is what I prefer, because Vinnie has a lot of good specific content, and he is in ketosis, but he calls it no sugar, no grains. And so I wanted to end the podcast on just my experience with keto, or NSNG. So I tried it in college. Like I said, never felt better in my life. The first week was rough. And the best way to get through that first week where you're transitioning from being used to running on sugars to running on fats is not worry about your intake. So his thing is eat as much as you want as long as it's the good stuff. Eat all the olives you want, the avocados, the meat, the eggs, all the butter, that kind of stuff. The nuts, there's certain nuts that are, like peanuts aren't great. And it's not even a nut, but walnuts are good, like macadamia nuts, the high fat nuts. The cheeses, high fat cheeses, salami, and don't limit yourself on that stuff. Like the fresh, really the way to think about it is if you go grocery shopping, stay on the outside of the store. Don't go into the aisles. There is rarely anything good in the aisles. The only thing I can think of right now is olive oil and maybe some like almond butter. I like almond butter. But everything else, like get your veggies, get the good fruits, your avocados, get your meat, your fish, all that stuff. That's all you need to be eating. There's pretty much nothing in the middle sections of the grocery store that you need to have in your pantry. So I shifted to that. You have the keto flu type response. You're pissing a lot. Make sure you're drinking a ton of water, getting salt. I've heard different things about why that is exactly, but it definitely is a thing, and it's only temporary, so it gets better. And the other thing I recommend is having easy options. So if you're in a hurry in the morning, what I do is I just hard boil a bunch of eggs. There's no excuse before work to, like, you can grab a few hard boiled eggs and have those in a pinch. Like, you don't need these bars. You're going to be full, so you won't eat near as much as you are used to. So you won't need to bring all the snacks to school or work. And kind of finding those hacks and how it fits your schedule is big to make sure that you're not tempted by the donuts they bring. So if you want to have some of those hard-boiled eggs, maybe you have a fridge at work, put some in there too. So if you do ever get hungry, just eat the good stuff, not the bad. But yeah, ultimately, I'm kind of hooked on NSNG. When I went to the Navy, I got off the train because first it was like OCS. I probably could have done it if I really like put my mind to it, but you eat what they provide to you, and a lot of it's carbs, and you're working out, you're getting beat. So I would just eat as much as I could get my hands on. Like they would give these little peanut butter cups in the line. People would just grab a handful of those and be at the table just like eating peanut butter straight, just trying to get as many calories as they could. So once I got in the Navy, I kind of got off the train until I went to Charleston, South Carolina for prototype. And I was really struggling all through power school, barely made it through, and prototype, having a hard time, failing exams. And it was getting to the point where I was going to have my final evaluation. And I decided I'm going to put my best foot forward. And to do that, I need to be operating at 100% physically as well to be 100% mentally. So I decided, okay, I'm going NSNG. And I remember it being around the end of March, and I had like some Brussels sprouts. I pretty much went a whole day where I think I only had like eggs and maybe some Brussels sprouts, went on the 7-mile run and go to work. And it was either like a Monday or Tuesday. I get into work feeling great, and I get called for urinalysis. So I have to go get drug tested, piss in the cup. And since it's in the morning, we were on the day shift at that point. They also breathalyze me. And it breathalyzes me, and it's 0.02. And I'm thinking, okay, I have those Listerine strips. Maybe it's the Listerine, so I'll wait. So I waited. The protocol is you got to wait like 30 minutes and do it again. And wait 30 minutes, do it again. Same thing, 0.02. Like, okay, that's weird. I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'll drink some water. And then you can drink water, but then you got to wait 20 minutes before you do the test again. So I did that. 0.02. So I'm like, what the hell? What's going on? And there's something, I think, because I was listening to the podcast, I remember Vinnie saying that you have to be careful with drinking because you're already going to have you're going to create ketones, you're going to create isopropyl in your mouth. And that's one thing they call it like keto breath, is because you start producing isopropyl in your mouth, which is alcohol. So I'm like, this has to be it, because I hadn't drunk anything in weeks. I remember we had a St. Patty's Day party at my house, and I had a Guinness then, and that was the last time I remember drinking alcohol. So I'm like, I knew right away. Like once I remembered that, I knew, okay, this is because I'm in ketosis. But of course, the petty officer there at urinalysis has no idea what I'm talking about and is just, following his procedures. So this goes on for like a few hours, and then he calls my boss, because my boss is, is probably like, what the hell is Mike doing? Ends up calling the military boss. We'll call him Lieutenant Wilson, because that's his name. But Lieutenant Wilson comes down, and all serious, he's like, talks to the petty officer, hey, I need to talk to you outside. So he thinks I'm a drunkard, right? And So this is about lunchtime, so I think they're going to actually let me eat lunch. He ends up walking me back to the barge, and on the walk back, he's like, Ensign White, if you did drink last night, it's no big deal. Like, that's a mistake. You can, it's a mistake, but you can recover from it. It's fine. It happens. But if you're lying, you're going to get wrecked. I'm paraphrasing here, it was like, sir, I haven't drunk in like 3 weeks. So I tell him about the ketosis thing, and also the last reading I had right before they let me go was 0.03. So I actually went up over those few hours that I was waiting in the lobby. So people are like, "What the hell is going on here?" No one knows. They make me go back at the end of the day because technically they can't let me leave until I blow zeros per their procedure. Go back at the end of the day. Nothing's changed. I'm still blowing positive. They call the DAPA over, so your non-military folks. This is like the person in charge of all the alcohol-related incidents. So he comes into the office, and he's like, "What the hell is going on?" He makes me open my mouth, inspects my mouth, checks under my tongue, and I blow. It's positive, 0.02. And they actually print out an article online explaining this whole isopropyl ketosis thing. And I think at that point, everyone realizes I'm not a drunkard. So that's good, because I have my final evaluation is the next day. So this day I thought I was going to have to study, I'm actually just spending it sitting in urinalysis the whole day. And finally they let me go. It's probably against their little procedure, but they had me rinse out my mouth, and then I blew, and it was zeros. So that's a side story. That's one of the side effects of ketosis. And if that's like the worst side effect I've had, the benefits far outweigh any of that. And I highly recommend it. I've never felt better. And actually, now that I'm out of the Navy, when I got to Austin, I decided there's really no excuse to not eating that way, because that's when I feel my best. And all the foods I love, I can still eat. I can eat bacon and eggs in the morning. I can have steak, beef. I make my beef bowls with ground beef bowls, put avocado in there, salsa, a little bit of sour cream, some cheese. Like, gosh, I could eat that stuff for the rest of my life. So that's my plug for NSNG. I hope you guys check out Vinnie Tortorich at vinnietortorich.com and pick up a copy of Fitness Confidential. And let me know, this is the first kind of book review, just solo rant. I'm not going to make these normal. It is a little awkward, I have to say. Just talking to myself or talking to this camera right here and a little microphone. So let me know what you think. And that is the Mike White Podcast, episode 5. Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening to the Mike White Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.